Welcome to the Adjusters Roundtable. We're excited to have with us today Jose Acevedo. Jose is a licensed public adjuster with our company. You're licensed in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Illinois, and Texas.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Work pretty much throughout most of the U.S. Jose, you've also settled over $7 million in new money claims for our clients. So welcome. We're happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
So we're going to discuss a truly valuable topic today, I think, that a lot of policyholders are going to be very interested in hearing, and that topic is, what are policyholders' duties after loss or their post-loss obligations when they have a claim or when they suffer a loss? When people have damage to their property, there's an anticipation for a quick response from their insurance company and a payment to be issued. We see that complying with your duties after loss or post-loss obligations can either affect a timely settlement or can kind of like delay that settlement. And as I understand, you have a very interesting case I would like to talk about today that really exemplifies the importance of your duties after loss or your post-loss obligations. And then we'll dive a little bit more into the minutia of what's in policies that you should be aware of. So this claim that you handled, as I understand, the client sustained extensive fire damage in a rental property that they owned. As I understand, they did not live in the area. They were from out of the area and had multiple properties in the area. You successfully presented this claim to the insurance company on the policyholder's behalf and was able to receive notice of a forthcoming policy limit payment due to your efforts on the claim. The independent adjuster that was assigned to the claim was from out of state and relied heavily on the documentation that you provided to bring the claim to initial determination. That initial determination, again, as we understand, was policy limits, right?
Yep.
Subsequently, right, a law firm representing the insurance company hit the brakes on the independent adjuster's report and initial determination and demanded an obscure request in the policy be fulfilled, which, if not complied with, could have resulted in a full denial of the claim, as we understand. Very interesting turn of events there, right? So, Jose, tell me exactly what happened in this particular situation, kind of how you overcame that, going from a substantial policy limit payment being noticed to you and your client that would be forthcoming, and then an attorney coming in and truly backtracking from that determination with this obscure provision of the policy. And how did you overcome that? So I'd love to hear the story.
All right. So yeah, it was a good one. So this is fire loss. Our client, like you said, had multiple properties. He wasn't in the area, kind of looked to us for a little boots on the ground, kind of leaned into us a little bit for that help. First and foremost, one of the most important documents in a fire is the fire report.
True.
One of the things we do is track down this fire report because this has to be provided to the insurance company. They need it to make a determination. This fire report, however, was initially called in. It was called in by a neighbor. So there was an incorrect address. Incorrect incident address on a fire report. That is huge.
Sounds problematic, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
Okay. So we stepped in, we got with the city, corrected the report, and provided that proper documentation to the carrier.
So that was you who got involved on the policyholder's behalf, reached out to the fire department, and was able to get that document correctly.
Yeah. It was a big deal. I mean, the carrier looked at that document immediately. These are two addresses that didn't match.
Yeah.
It's, again, a big deal, right? So we were able to correct that. After we provided that report, we hopped in, did our full sketch and scope. It was a deep dive into this property, into this loss.
Forensic examination of the damages.
We're taking measurements, photos. We're taking chem swabs from certain soot damage that we're trying to document. We're using those chem sponges to take that soot, make sure we can document that and show that to the carrier. I mean, that's huge. You have to show that. So we were able to meet with the adjuster. Again, the adjuster was out of state. So he did look to our documentation a little bit, right? He relied on our forensics to kind of relay that to the insurance company.
Sure.
And everything was great.
You guys were in agreement on the scope of damages, the amount of damages, all those things.
Yep. And we were at policy limits, so this would have been a policy limits payment to the insured. As we were waiting and tracking down that payment, all right, we get a letter from a law firm, and this law firm represents the carrier.
Okay.
They have a request, right? So this request, and they required the insured to have a battery maintenance plan.
Interesting.
A battery maintenance plan for all the fire detection systems in the house, and that had to be updated annually. So they had to show this documentation, right?
Wow, okay.
So again, we hopped on in. We were able to acquire this documentation from the insured, from the management company, and provided, again, that to this law firm whose all eyes, in our opinion, is looking for a way to deny this claim, right?
Wow.
They're looking to get that determination to handle the claim. So I think in that sense, we really were able to deep dive and watch out for this insured, because, you know, those post-loss obligations, those things are there. They're in the policy.
Right.
You have to deep dive and find those things and question them if they're being called to action by the carrier.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot to unpack just in that little description there. You had, you know, an incorrect fire damage report from the fire department, you know, which could potentially obviously raise some red flags to an insurance company. Then you had an out-of-state adjuster that came in. You work with them, and you, as I understand, there's an actual letter you received from the insurance company stating that they were in agreement with policy limit payment.
It was pretty official.
And then you were just waiting for the payment to come in, and it didn't.
Official,
and then you received another letter saying, pump the brakes. Maybe this isn't even a covered claim at all, right? And that, you know, diving into that and making sure that you get that information for your policyholder on their behalf in a way that's digestible by the insurance company made the difference between a claim that, for all intents and purposes, should have been an easy policy limits payment. But there were two very huge hurdles that you overcame for the client just to get it. So ultimately what happened? You sent that documentation in?
So sent the documentation in, law firm received it, and shortly after, it was a full policy limits payment.
Circle back around and
actually came in.
Okay.
Right, but yeah, it was, here's a issue of payment, hold on, we want to check something out. Oh, it's all cleared? Okay, here's the issue of payment.
Interesting.
So yeah.
It just shows you, you know, that there's certainly pitfalls out there that you might not even be aware of in your policy. And that's when we really circle back to this duties after loss, post-loss obligations, right? So every policy that exists, whether it be residential, commercial, admitted carriers, surplus line carriers in every state, has provisions in the policy. That's what we just talked about, duties after loss, post-loss obligations. Some of those could be things like you just talked about that are in the policy that you can't go back and retroactively redo those things once a loss occurs, right? You need to be aware that these things are in your policy. And so understanding a policy, like we do, we read policies every day, but not everybody reads policies every day. You know, they don't understand the legalese. These are contracts of adhesion that are kind of written in a way that favor the insurance companies because they're so complicated and they're so hard to read, right? I would like to hear from you kind of your thoughts on some of the things that you're seeing, because we understand in a lot of states, you know, there's a lot of laws that have changed, policies are changing. And we're seeing that, you know, there actually is some recent case law that came out, as I understand, where a claim was denied in its entirety because an insurance company asked for documentation, like your client was asked, replied, but didn't reply sufficiently. And because they didn't reply sufficiently, that was grounds for denying the claim in its entirety. That's a big deal. And so I think, you know, being proactive and understanding what's in your policy, right, is super important. Some of the things that we see, and maybe you can further explain these to me, proof of loss forms. We're seeing that they're now required in policies within either like 30 or 60 days after claims filed, and that potentially you can get your claim denied. Does not provide. So what are those? What needs to be included with those, and how do you help a policyholder you know, comply with those post-loss obligations?
So yeah, like Josh was saying, you're saying one of the big post-loss obligations is a proof of loss form. This is a legal document. It's basically stating your claim, stating the amount that your claim is worth. This is a huge document that, to some carriers, you're under a tight deadline. We have some that are 60 days, some that are 30 days. 30 days from the loss that you have to supply this documentation. That's a deadline. That's given. It's in the policy. So if a post-loss obligation, you're not abiding by that policy, again, adhesion, each side has to do their part. So if you're not doing that, your claim can be at risk of being denied or coverage being questioned. But you know, that's one thing we do. We deep dive into those, you know, into those policies, make sure that yes, proof of loss is required. We have to have reasonable inspection given. We cover all of those things, but you have to look, you have to find that you have to have that information to battle with it. If you don't have that, then you're at an extreme disadvantage. And
to the point where you can even get your claim denied.
A risk, like an extreme risk.
Yeah, we see things like recorded statements, examination under oath. Like a lot of people don't even realize that that could be part of a claim investigation is a recorded statement, like taking your statement or an examination, like those can be scary and daunting things if you don't have somebody on your side to help walk you through that.
So anything you're saying, you know, the insurance company, you know, is going to look into, right? Examination under oath. This is another level of kind of like a recorded statement. These are
and that's where like an attorney sits on the other side and asks you questions, right?
This is heavy stuff, right? So, you know, we have to, you know, inform our clients, and if it's an obligation, if it's a request, you have to abide by it.
Yeah.
But we help our clients. They're not caught off guard by anything. We definitely put them in the best position possible for those situations, because they can be daunting, like you're saying. Yeah, they can be a little intimidating.
And although that seems overwhelming, like, and it does, just talking about it right now, I mean, that's a lot to process for somebody who might have never been through the claims process before. But you handle that on every claim. Like, to you have a process, you are able to provide that guidance to your client and understand, like, hey, this is everyday life for me. Like, I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to get you to the finish line. You're going to feel and understand like you're in good hands, right? And you're going to get to the finish line. And so to me, that just feels like I wouldn't want to do it alone, knowing the hoops and hurdles that an insurance company could potentially put you through when you file a claim, because it seems like there's just more and more things and more requirements for policyholders, and maybe even less and less for insurance companies at the same time. And so you need to be prepared, read your policy before you have a loss. That policy is your contract, and it's the playing field. It's your coverages, it's your endorsements, it's your exclusions, like whatever's written in there is what either can be afforded or taken away from you, right?
Yeah.
And so without having somebody who really understands like what's in there, it's tough to even know what you're owed.
70 pages, 80 pages. I mean, they go back and forth. They'll agree to something on this, give you coverage, and then down the line, page 60, page 70, it's taken away. So it's almost like a little, detective work to kind of straighten it out and just kind of get to that coverage, see what's actually covered, what's afforded to you, to the insured. Yeah.
And just diving into the proof of loss again real quick too. So the proof of loss, like you said, one page, legally binding document that states the amount of your loss. And, all the policies I've seen recently basically say it has to have supporting documentation. So when they ask for that, how's the policyholder supposed to know what that is? So in your interpretation, how do you attack that? What is some typical documentation that substantiates a proof of loss form?
Yeah, so the proof of loss, it's stating the amount of the loss, right? So you have to come up with that, right? So that has to come from somewhere. So one of the services we provide, we generate an estimate. This is what's getting us to that number, right?
So you physically go on site,
Absolutely.
take photos, measurements, forensic investigation, build out the documentation to
so
support that number.
we're sketching, scoping, documenting, we're analyzing things, we're looking at weather reports, weather forensics. We're trying to get down to the nitty-gritty of like, as much information as from this claim that we can get, we will use, right? So creating that estimate, we're pulling in our documentation, our kind of forensics, our sketch and scope, our experience on the field with the damages that we've always seen. And we're pulling in experts. If it's an issue with an HVAC, I'm going to pull in an HVAC expert, right? These are solid folks licensed to do this work on the field.
Right.
That's the expert, right? I'll take his information and I'll pass that along to the carrier. But we'll, contractors, GCs, roofers, stucco, drywall, anybody who's actually involved in the repair, we get to know them, right? They have information that we need, so we'll include them in some of our estimates and create basically that value of the claim.
Yeah,
right?
a real world assessment of what's actually going to cost to get done.
Dollar amount on the claim. You have to present that to the carrier, right? And that's one of the probably the biggest piece of the proof of loss, right? It ties it directly to it. In that proof of loss, we have replacement costs, we have actual cash value. We're required to submit an actual cash value, send it to the carrier. So we're on top of all these little
part
nuances.
of the changing laws too. Like that's a new thing, right? That wasn't necessarily required even a couple of years ago. So it just seems really hard that if somebody had a catastrophic event like a massive hurricane come through, their family's displaced, and then you're telling me that there's circumstances where 30 days after that event happens, they have to get all those people together, all that documentation together, and get it over to the insurance company to comply with these post-loss obligations, or they might be prejudicing the insurance company for their claim.
We have seen it is in policies.
Yeah. Wow.
It is in current policies. Yeah, it's 30 days. That is short timeline.
Right.
Yeah. That is a short timeline.
But that is something that you obviously completely handle start to finish for a policyholder, right?
That's what we do.
Yeah. It almost seems like negotiating a claim is a smaller percentage of the claim than actually preparing and presenting the claim. Would you say that's accurate?
I'd say the heavy lifting is upfront, and a lot of the work that we do to validate the claim and to have a successful claims process is done up front.
That's awesome.
For sure.
Yeah. Such a value add for a policyholder and peace of mind, throughout this chaotic process. So
yeah, we're shoulders to cry on at times, for sure. But public advocates at the end of the day. So
that's awesome.
That's why it matters.
Beautiful. Jose, that was very informative information.
Yeah,
we really appreciate you coming in today and being able to share this with, policyholders out there. take a look at your policy, look at your duties after loss. Understand these things prior to suffering a claim. But if you've had a claim and you have questions or you're going through this, understand that a public adjuster like Jose, you can come in and you can prepare and present that claim in a way that fulfills those obligations. Now you're not prejudicing the insurance company, and you put yourself in a much better position. Even if it's an adversarial position, you don't like what the insurance company said, you might not be able to go back to the insurance company and request additional funds if you didn't provide all this documentation, all these things up front. Is that fair to say too?
Yeah, originally, yeah. If you don't provide that initial documentation on point, everything that they're asking for, everything that's required, and it's accurate, you are at a severe disadvantage if you're not presenting your claim in a digestible and accurate way for them to make a decision.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Adjusters Roundtable. I would just ask that you share this information with as many people as possible, get the word out, smash that subscribe button, like this, and we look forward to sharing more valuable information for you in the future.